Good morning, everyone. Lačo-dives. Buenos dias. I don't know, many languages could be used for this morning in Barcelona. It's a very special morning for us at International Step-by-Step Association and the Romani Early Years Network initiative. We are hosting an in-person event. At the same time, we are broadcasting it online so that those who couldn't join us here in Barcelona are now watching us from different countries. So welcome all, both you in person. We have representatives of national REYNs from 11 countries here, as well as some local stakeholders. And our panel is here also ready to give you some insights. My name is Aljosa Rudas, and I'm a REYN coordinator and at ISSA junior program manager. I'll be facilitating this event, and it's a great honor to welcome you on the launch event of the evidence that we collected through the REYN Early Childhood Research study. Naming it, we entitled it Breaking the Silence. And why breaking the silence? Our researchers from CREA Roma Research Group will tell you later, but actually together we try to break the silence about the status of young Roma children in Europe, primarily focusing on 11 countries. And it's my pleasure and honor to introduce you to Manuela Fernández, the director from the Office for Equal Treatment and Non-Discrimination. Welcome and thank you for being with us.
First one. Okay. So good morning to everyone. Lačo-dives. I would like to apologize first because I don't have a good level of English. I will do my best and I'm very, very nervous. Secondly, I would like to thank you for inviting me. I am very excited to participate in the presentation of this study because of what it represents for the rights of Roma children and their families. And because if the results are incorporated by the governments mainly, it will mean an improvement in their lives. So for the first time, the government of Catalonia includes a Ministry of Equality and Feminism that stands on equal foot with the rest of cabinet portfolios. This reflects the commitment of the government towards instilling 4 major transformations in the country: the democratic transformation, the social transformation, the green transformation, and the feminist transformation. The latter has an axis of its own in the government plane, namely toward a feminist country based on the guarantee of human rights, which starts with the following statement. Inequality, discrimination, and violence are both cause and consequence of a structural systems of oppression that generate arbitrary domination, such as heteropatriarchy, racism, and anti-Gypsyism. The action of this government aims at guaranteeing human rights, since without equality, there is no individual or collective freedom. It requires a fair and equitable distribution of opportunities and resources based on recognition and respect for difference. So we have a new ministry which has to roll out a new law, the Act 19-2020 on equality of treatment and non-discrimination, which I will now explain to you very briefly. Through an office, the Office for Equal Treatment and Non-Discrimination, and it does so by appointing the first Roma person in history as a high position to carry out this responsibility. This is me. It seems that we are late. We have 600 years here, but we are late. But if we arrive, we can make many changes possible. So the Act 19-2020 on equality of treatment and non-discrimination seeks to safeguard the right to equal treatment and non-discrimination, to eliminate any action or behavior which may violate the dignity of persons, and to guarantee the free development and free expression of personality and personal abilities without discrimination of any kind. It regulates the rights and obligations of individuals and legal entities, both public and private, and lays down the principles that must inform public measures aimed at preventing, eliminating, and remedying all forms of direct and indirect discrimination that may occur in either the public or private realms. The grounds protected by the law are the following. Is the next, yeah. Territorial or national origin and xenophobia, sex, gender, sexual orientation or identity, and any form of LGBTI phobia or misogyny, age, race, ethnicity, or skin color, and any form of racism, such as anti-Semitism or anti-Gypsyism, language or cultural identity, ideology, political or other views or personal ethical beliefs, religious beliefs, and any expression of Islamophobia, Christianophobia, or Judeophobia, social or economic status, administrative situation, occupation or condition of deprivation of liberty, and any expression of aporophobia or hatred against the homeless. Physical, sensory, intellectual, or mental disability, or other types of functional diversity, alterations in health, serological status, or genetic characteristics, physical appearances also, or clothing, and any other recognized by the international legal instruments. So the passage of 2020 Act allows for administrative protection against situations of discrimination. The Office for Equality of Treatment and Non-Discrimination is the body responsible for receiving the complaints, either in person or online, through a complaint form. This office was inaugurated in last March. Information campaigns will be launched in order to reach the public, and especially those social groups that are at greater risk of suffering discrimination and may not view the public administration as a source of protection. The office has the capacity to sanction as well as to establish mediation and reparation measures. If there are instances of discrimination in public administrations, the office will act ex officio. The decree that will regulate the anti-discrimination sanctions and alternative measures is currently being processed, expected in the coming months. A victim attention protocol is under elaboration right now, grounded in a comprehensive victim-based care model with a specialized and multidisciplinary guidance. It will incorporate the figure of the accompanying person throughout the whole process. The Ministry of Equality and Feminism is also drafting the protocol for the duty of intervention in situations of discrimination or institutional violence in the public administration, which will be coupled with training on equal treatment and non-discrimination for the entire civil service, prioritizing education, health, social services, and justice staff, as well as the security forces. In order to elaborate the first quadriennial plan for equal treatment and non-discrimination, an interdepartmental plan, the ministry is designing a survey on discrimination and hate crimes. This pioneering survey will collect data that no official body has ever gathered here in Catalonia, working on the areas of discrimination set out in the Act on Equality of Treatment and Non-Discrimination, with a special emphasis on the racialized population. Lastly, the creation of the Commission for the Protection and Promotion of Equal Treatment and Non-Discrimination will provide a space for public participation, including civil society organizations and experts. I would like to end my speech by acknowledging studies such as the one we are presenting here today. As a representative of the government, I would like to emphasize that the scientific evidence, especially in relation to public policies that protect fundamental rights, such as the right to quality education from birth, or to decent work or educational free time, they have to be based on successful experiences, on experiences that have given evidence that they have fulfilled their purpose. Historically, so many things has been tried with the Roma people, and we are so tired. Related to the results, for example, the fact that some results of this study locate the barriers to the development of Roma children in structural inequalities and not in the fact of being different, or that anti-Gypsyism is one of the key results, teaches us to the administration that we must know how to identify these barriers in order to overcome them and be able to design policies that have a real impact on transforming the lives of Roma children and their families. We all know how many public administrations invest a lot of resources in policies that have no impact because they are not based on the evidence. The need to implement specific policies and practices addressed to young Roma children and their families, specifically focused on early children development, but not from a perspective of the shortcomings of being Roma, but from a perspective of the transformation of the structural conditions to achieve and ensure the development of Roma children is a clear proposal that combines transversal action and a specific policy in a combined way. We want to reach material equality, and we need a specific actions along the path of equality that bring us closer to that equality, in which we don't get lost along the way. I hope that you will send us these results to the government of Catalonia, because although we have not participated in the investigation, I'm sure that everything you have identified can be extrapolated to our context and can be useful. Thank you very much. Nice to que saurengues a Stephen.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Manuela, for your contribution. And it's really there in Catalonia, they are setting an example for many European countries, appointing a Roma woman to be a director in such an important body of government, and especially launching the law, the act, which clearly states that and recognizes and acknowledges the anti-Gypsyism is also one of the way that should be treated through the legal processes. Really amazing, and hopefully many countries will take an example. And thank you also for the encouraging words for our research studies that we did, and shortly we will learn more about them. Now, I would like to introduce you Liana Ghent, the Executive Director of the International Step-by-Step Association, just to open the door to the early childhood field. Liana, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. It is an honor to be here with you. Thank you so much, Manuela, for the inspiring words. Perfect start to our event, and it's really a pleasure to have you with us. We know you are very busy, and as Aljosa said, we take a lot of inspiration from the work you're doing, but also the progress you've made in terms of the legal framework. I will keep my remarks very short so that we can have more time to hear from the researchers themselves. As Aljosa mentioned, I come from the International Step-by-Step Association, ISSA. This is the network that hosts the REYN initiative, the Romani Early Years Network initiative. And we have focused on this issue as part of our strategy for 10 years already. So our REYN initiative proudly celebrates this year the 10th anniversary. And it is part of ISSA's core mission, because it looks at the right to education, the right to development for the most vulnerable children. Of course, at ISSA, we advocate for all children. We focus on children from birth until age 10. And we, through our work of our support programs that look at the quality of services that young children and their families access, but we also look at the wider environment in which children develop. For instance, how discriminatory attitudes and practices can be, or how systems actually do not support child development, do not support families the way they do. So through the work of our members in more than 40 countries, all over Europe, Eastern Europe, Western Europe, Central Asia, we stand for young children. We stand for their development. We stand for the families, but also for the practitioners that work with them. And we are, of course, working in such a diverse region. You can imagine from Western Europe all the way to Mongolia. However, we see that the challenges are very similar often, and the approaches, the understanding of quality can be very similar as well. We see the same in the REYN network. As the research will also show, there are similarities across countries, and also we can learn a lot from each other in terms of progress made. I mentioned already the work of ISSA and the fact that what is our core work. I should also honor the work of our members. We have close to 100 member organizations, and 11 of them are part of the REYN network, and many are here in the room. Many, I hope, are watching us online right now. Why did we choose to partner with our researchers, partners at CREA? Why did we embark on this research? First of all, we wanted to make our own work more informed by the reality on the ground. But we also wanted to understand more, has there been any progress? We wanted, as Manuela said, to gather evidence, to really have data and to have arguments that we can use in our engagement with policymakers. And we think that we have gathered significant such arguments. Just a few words about why we think that this research is unique and special compared to the research that we are all familiar with. First of all, we chose, as we designed it together with the research team, we chose to look at the most vulnerable among the vulnerable, to really understand perhaps the situation of those that are not usually in the light, and that we felt is very important and very much part of our mission. About the methodology and why that is unique, that's not my best effort here to describe. I'm sure Fernando and Emilia will do a much better job. But it is also unique, we feel, because we chose to look at wider aspects that support or hinder child development. So we didn't just look, are children accessing kindergarten, or are children accessing certain typical early childhood services, but we looked also at the environment in which children grow, physical, but also other kinds of emotional environment, social environment. And we looked also at many things that the rest of us take for granted, like having running water, having a park nearby, having a library nearby. So we tried to understand, what is it like to be a young Roma child in these conditions? And we hope that the findings will be put to good use, not just by our own network, because the results have reinforced our commitment that just how important and how needed our efforts are. But we also hope that these results, we all, together with our wider ISSA network and partners around the continent, we can all use the findings to persuade those that have the power to do something. And we know that much has been done. Many policies have been done. Discussions have taken place for decades. Many here in the room have worked on this for a lifetime. And it is time, now it is time that we all try to make a difference. And with this, I will end. I'm also very much looking forward to hearing from our research team. And we very much hope that this is just the beginning of our cooperation with CREA and with colleagues here in Barcelona. We look forward to working together. Thank you.
Thank you, Liana, for opening the door to the findings of the research. And as you heard, as Liana mentioned, so really we are now trying to break the silence and also to introduce to those who are working with Roma communities on the field, NGOs, relevant stakeholders in countries, that early childhood is not, as Liana mentioned, is not just about accessing or attending the services that are available, but it goes beyond. It talks and explores the areas that our researchers will talk more about it. So it is an honor and pleasure that we partner with University of Barcelona, the CREA research team, especially the Roma research group. And the floor I give now to Dr. Fernando Macías-Aranda and Dr. Emilia Aiello to guide us through the research so that we break this silence finally and start talking about child development and the status of young Roma children in Europe through a holistic perspective. Thank you.
Good morning to everyone. Bon dia. So first of all, let me say thank you very much for being here with us today. For us, it's a pleasure, and also, can you hear me? Yeah. Better. Okay. So buenos dias. Good morning. For us, it's a pleasure to be here with you today and to share this for us amazing work that I don't know. Maybe it's working better. Hello, this is working better? Okay. So good morning again. So it's for us a pleasure to be here and to share with you the findings of this amazing project that we developed in partnership with ISSA and the REYN. For Emilia and for me, Fernando, is a pleasure to represent the team who was working during all these months. And first of all, before going deep to the data that we want to share with you today, and also some positive and successful initiatives that we identify, let me first of all introduce a little bit about our research center. So who are we? Who is CREA? So CREA is a community of researchers. So we are working in many different universities that are here located in Catalonia, and others in Valencia, in Basque Country, also in another parts of the world as Brazil. We are working in an interdisciplinary way, doing researches on sociology, education, pedagogy, social work, political science, but also we are a group of really diverse people in terms of religion, age, ethnicity, and gender. We have a main goal in our research group is not only to be excellent in our research, publishing the results of our investigations, but also to do things that really transform the lives of people, in terms to be also a human excellence in the research. To do that, we use an approach. This is the communicative methodology. In the case of the Roma Studies, that is one of the lines of our research group. As you know, usually the research that is done from many years use or look the Roma people, not including their voices in the research, and also arriving to conclusions that at the end reproduce the stereotypes and prejudice against us, but also that are not transforming really the life situation of that people. So thanks to this communicative approach, what we are doing is not researching on Roma or about Roma. So we are researching with and for the Roma people in our research. And also, we try not only to describe the situation about Roma, what is not working, we try also to provide solutions that really transform the life of the Roma people that is involved in our research. In this sense, this communicative methodology responds or is totally in line with the claims and the needs that Roma we have for a long time, that we say to scientific community that we need the results, but in order to transform and to have more opportunities in our lives. So if you want to know more about CREA, this is our website. You can find here our publications and investigations and all the information about us. So let's go in deep to our REYN study called EU Roma Children 22. This project, or the proposal of this project at the beginning, as Liana mentioned before, was to bring in focus and discussion the current situation of young Roma children under 6 years of age and their families in these 11 countries, also analyze these structural and emerging issues, and indicate what should be prioritized in both countries and also at the European policy level. To do that, we take into account the key areas that are important when we are talking about the child's development, not only if they have or not access to education or early education, but also what are the living conditions, what about safety and security, what about responsive parenting, etc., etc. So the general objectives of the project, the first one was obviously assess and present the situation of these young Roma children and their families in these 11 countries, identifying the barriers, the needs, the structural challenges, and special needs that maybe appear because the COVID situation. The second objective was, in this communicative approach, is not only describe, is also what is working, what is going on that is really transforming the lives of these children. So identify positive actions and successful actions that can give us the opportunity to improve the situation of these vulnerable, inside the vulnerable population, as Liana mentioned before. And the last general objective was also provide a consolidated evidence in order to advocate for Roma young children and families access to high quality, inclusive and effective early childhood services in all Europe, not only in these 11 countries, obviously focused on these 11 countries, but also in order to translate these results to the other side of Europe. And finally, inform the advocacy work of ISSA under the REYN initiative for engaging its position and influence as an advocate on Roma-related early childhood development issues. At the end, what's the photo of our project? What we know, what we need to know, and what Europe and these European countries needs to do. That's, at the end, the final proposal of our REYN study. So in order to design this project, we look the literature reviews of what is important for the child development. So for any child, the most important thing in order to be safe and to have the same opportunities is to look what is the family and living environment of this child. What about the safety and security for this child and their family? Also, what about the health and well-being? Obviously, early learning, and also the paper of the parents and families. But in the case of Roma children, also we need to include another indicator, another variable, is anti-Gypsyism, is discrimination, because this is not always happening with every child in the world, but it's many, many times happening when we are talking about Roma children. To do that, we take all the amazing work that all the REYN national contact points did in these 11 countries, as you say, Belgium, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Bulgaria, Croatia, Hungary, Italy, Kosovo, Serbia, Slovenia, Slovakia, and Ukraine, as you can see in the picture. And at the end, what we did, so we did different techniques. We did this research in two phases. One on a first phase, more quantitative, with questionnaires to Roma families and questionnaires also to stakeholders, and a second phase, more qualitative, in order to do interviews with policymakers, stakeholders, and also focus groups with families in order to put in relation this quantitative and qualitative data, these numbers and the voices at the end. So it means that we collect data for more than 3,000 people. For sure, we are talking about the vulnerables inside the vulnerables, but we are talking about many, many people. And at the end, we are talking about more than 2,800 Roma families in these 11 countries, because each questionnaire represents a whole family that in average represents to 6 or 7 people by home. About the limitations of our study, for sure, the sample, we cannot say that the sample is representative. We cannot say that the sample is, we can generalize the situation, but we need to take into account the sample because they are talking about many barriers that they are facing. Also, we face another situations during the fieldwork. For instance, obviously the case of Ukraine, as unfortunately you know that what is happening there. Fortunately, they did almost all the field work. So thank you very much for your work and for being here with us today too. And also in other countries during the field work, they don't have the opportunity to access to the total sample, not the 50 families. So they questioned 40 families or 20. So some data should be taken into account carefully with this point of view. Let's go to this country analysis and let's go to talk about the data that we obtained during the investigation. In this first phase, we create these infographics with a country profile in quantitative terms, in numbers, about what is happening with these Roma children under 6 years of age and their families. I think that you can find the infographics at the end of the room, and at home you can find the infographics online. I think that Aljosa maybe then can explain more. And also we have another infographic more from Belgium. This is not quantitative, it's more qualitative, so it's not much numbers, it's more like the voices from the stakeholders, the families and the policymakers, but both of them are really useful for this first phase. We identify 2 key findings and 2 key challenges. Let's go first of all to the findings. The first one is talking about the difficulties and barriers that these young Roma children under 6 years of age and their families are facing. We structured these findings in 5 policy important areas. The first one is about family status and living conditions. In almost all the countries, we observe a really low educational level of families, critical family status and economy with high rates of unemployment or inactivity, barriers in the access to financial support, poor living conditions, etc., etc. Let's go to see some graphics about that. Here you have the relation or the persons living in the homes that we interview by activity status. In blue, you observe the people employed. In orange, you can see the people unemployed. And in green, you can see the people in the room, in the house that is in an activity because of disability, because of retire, or another issue. As you can observe, in all the countries, there are more people unemployed or in an activity in all the homes. And in cases like Bosnia and Herzegovina, the number of employed people is really, really alarming. So the major part of these families are not working or unemployed. This is also happening with, we observe the educational level. I know that there are a lot of information there and maybe you can not watch well, but you can see in the first columns of each country, the people who has less than secondary education. Unfortunately, also in all the countries, the major part of the families, they don't have the primary school finalized or they didn't arrive to high school or didn't complete the high school. So we are talking about families that commonly they didn't successfully overcome the high school education. This is also another indicator that is really alarming is when you observe the Roma children that are sharing their room with adults or even sharing their bed with adults. So in many cases, these Roma children under 6 years of age, you can see when Roma children is sharing with the parents is in orange, in yellow, you can see when they are also sharing the bed. So as you can see, the yellow column is in many countries really alarming. So we are talking about children that they don't have their own room, and in many cases they don't have their own bed. So this is the situation in terms of that. And also another indicator about these living conditions or about this exclusion in terms of living conditions is when we look the facilities that have these children and their families at home, as hot water in green, as kitchen in blue, as toilet inside the home in yellow, or electric light in blue. We observe, for instance, that in terms of electric light, many countries they have, but when we look if they have toilet in the room, in the home, or when they have hot water, the data is really alarming, because in many countries, as you can see, for instance, in the case of Ukraine, a lot of they don't have hot water in the home. And we are talking about the 60% of the Roma children, they don't have hot water. And we are talking about a country as a Ukraine, where the winter is not like in Barcelona as well. So this is also talking about the situation, the living conditions that these children and their families are living. We have another indicators also, for instance, how these homes are facing some problems like leaks or insufficient natural light, or pollution, crime, vandalism. And as you can observe, in some cases, the Roma families declare that they are in 70, 75, 80, or 90% living in these conditions. Another indicator in living conditions, talking about the effort the possibility to have the families to pay the vacation, or to keep their home available in terms of temperature, and also the indicators that you can observe in the slide are really alarming in the major part of the countries. Another group of indicators talk about health and well-being. We observe that problems in immunization of Roma, dangerous habits and situations related with maternal health, barriers to access to family and emotional support, and also alarming eating habits and routines. Here you have the percentage of Roma children under 6 years of age that have all the vaccines for his or her age. In cases as Bosnia, again, or Ukraine, this percentage is over 30%. So it means that we are talking about Roma children that they don't have this access to vaccination. Also, you can observe when families talk about the possibility that they have to have support for the other ones when they feel down, or they are unhappy, or they have a problem. In some cases, as Croatia, the 95% of families declare that they didn't ask no one when they have some problem related with this topic. And also, another alarming indicator is the number of people with disabilities who are living in this home. In cases of Hungary, the 42% of Roma homes have someone at home with a disability. And this is also happening in Ukraine with a 36%, or in Serbia with a 30%. When we talk about the habits, we observe also a really important issue related with the smoking during pregnancy. In the major part of the countries, this rate is over 30%. So we know what this means for the child. And when we talk about the possibility to have the Roma families or we ask them if they visit a health center in the last 2 months, they recognize in many cases that yes, they go to a health center because a child problem related with the health. For instance, in the case of Serbia and Slovakia, this percentage is over 70% in the cases. So we are talking about families that face usually many health problems. We also observe that the position or when these children have a pediatrician assigned or a family GP doctor assigned, in cases as Kosovo or the 60% of the children, they don't have a pediatrician assigned, so they don't have any doctor for their children. And this could be also be related with the vaccination, but we should go in deep further in our research. And finally, in terms of health, we are also say that many families say that they cannot easily get help from doctors. For instance, in the case of Hungary, the 34% or the 32% also in the case of Ukraine. About safety and about early learning, we observe barriers to access social security and social protection or non-safety areas associated with crime and vandalism, as we said before. Barriers also to access quality services, facilities near home as a theater, as we will see, or the country language as a barrier in order to understand and to learn as the other child are doing. Here you have the Roma household with children under 6 years of age that receive any kind of subsidy or similar. In some cases, this data is really alarming. Please don't take into account the data from Hungary, because we observe a mistake in the question, because the question was asking for subsidy or similar, and thanks to the work that the national contact point is doing, they said this data is not true. Maybe the family are asking for another kind of support. So we are going to double check this questionnaire and this question. And also when we observe the access to this, when families say that they have not access to safe water, look the case of the Kosovo with a percentage almost near to 30%, or also alarming data from other countries. These toilets inside the houses that we talked about before, and these unsafety places that also we talked about before. Look please carefully this graphic. Which Roma children under 6 years of age that we take into account in our research have access to these quality services. In the case of Slovakia, 94% of them, they don't have access to quality services, but this data is bigger than 50% in almost all the countries. So we are talking about children that they don't have access to quality services as related with education. And in this table, you see in more red the most alarming data about the facilities that these children have near home, taking into account 2 kilometers. Theaters, health center, sports center, vet center, cultural center, whatever. All these facilities that are important to take into account the child's development. So as you can see, almost everything is in red. So it's a really alarming situation, because these children, they don't have these opportunities or these facilities near home in these 2 kilometers. Finally, about these preliminary results about responding parenting, we would like to say that mothers, Roma mothers, are the main ones who are taking care of the children. This is not only happening in Roma community. So, I mean, this data is significant, but is not alarming in comparison with the rest of society. But what is really alarming is when these families are saying that mothers, Roma mothers, are not having support from the other family members for many reasons. So in the case of Hungary, this situation is clearly alarming, as you can see in the slide. The second key finding that we found is anti-Gypsyism as a barrier. We observed that a huge part of the Roma children under 6 years of age and their families are facing discrimination when accessing public services, early childhood services, playground and kindergarten, among others. But besides, a major part of the Roma families declares that they face discrimination always, often, or sometimes in many other areas. For example, at work, looking for a paid work, when accessing on public services, a supermarket, shop, etc., or when they are trying to send or buy a home. We should go in deep to this data. For this session, you are not going to see any graphic or table because we need to prepare this data better. But in a first analysis, we observe these findings. Two important challenges that we found or we want to share with you today. First one, we observe that in many cases, countries have ACT policies, but these policies are not arriving to Roma children. And when they have Roma policies, these policies are neither arriving to Roma children. So we need to combine these policies, early childhood policies and Roma policies, in order to have Roma or policies especially addresses to Roma situation, but inside these policies, we need to include the most vulnerable in the vulnerability, as Roma women, as Roma with disabilities, as Roma children under 6 years of age, or another groups. But as Manuela mentioned before, thank you very much for your presentation. We don't need any policy. We need evidence-based practices and policies, because many times we are doing things that or are not working or are reproducing the situation of the child and their families that we are working. What is the further steps that we should do? For sure, we need to go in deep to the qualitative data and put in combination these quantitative, these numbers with the voices, finalize this cross-country analysis that hopefully in the following weeks we are going to share with you the final report or the final document. For sure, to define what are the priorities at European and a country level, and also to think about how to disseminate and use the data that we have. We have good news for you. Even or in spite of we didn't go yet to the qualitative data, because the CREA background research, we can share with you today, and Emilia is going to share with you today, some positive initiatives or successful educational actions that are transforming, that giving us an opportunity to improve the situation of this family. So give me, please, let me please give the floor to Emilia in order to present this part.
How much time do I have? 20 minutes? Okay, that's fine. Okay, so good morning to everybody. It's very nice to see you all again. And thank you, Manuela Fernández, for being here again. We know how busy you are. And thank you very much also, Liana, for the excellent work that ISSA is doing. I think that it's very important what you have mentioned. And I think that it's very important also. Do you hear me correctly? Yeah. The value of this survey that you, Liana, pointed out, how to capture the reality of the vulnerable within the vulnerable. So that's very important. I think that it's also very valuable what you already mentioned, that we have legislation, so we are progressing, we are making steps. And it's also very valuable that in this room, we have policymakers, we have researchers, we have people coming from different types of NGOs and grassroots organizations. So, okay, there are problems, but at the same time, alliances and synergies are being built on the ground to overcome this situation. I will focus on it's kind of the data that we have shown with this survey reveals the urgency of the moment, the urgency of do something, but at the same time, thanks God, we know that there are things that are working, and we have sound data and rigorous data that shows that, okay, how we can transform that situation. I'm sure that in the coming months, when you collect and analyze, and when we do that together, the qualitative data, we will also capture those stories of transformations. The European Commission has commissioned a work that actually Dr. and Professor Teresa Sordet, who is also a member of CREA, was in this expert group. And the European Commission is already saying that we need to priority should be given to mainstreaming existing good practice. This is not an isolated, there are a number of examples of inclusive education informed by research that have been shown to have had a social impact. Actually, yesterday we were talking about this. This is not an isolated case. Such improvements are due to the implementation of successful educational actions that have increased student attainment, coexistence, and social cohesion. And what is even better is that these actions are being transferred all over the world. So just recently, in this same report, another thing that the report explicitly told is that we need to overcome this educational myth. So many times we will hear that Roma families are not interested in education, and we know for sure that this is not true. So we are saying that, but I'm not going to say that is more important, but we also have legislation and European institutions saying that that's not true. Also, the specific call in research, was elaborated to fund this type of research that captures the reality of not just showing what's happening, but also how we can transform the social reality. Also, good news is that in these very months, in November 2022, a European funded project of 10 partners across Europe is going to start, focus on early childhood education. This is being led by Dr. Rocío García Carrión, that she's member of CREA. So again, we are doing here, it's based on a mixed methodology, and this project, Say Early, that you can also Google it and you will find more about it, it's going to implement successful educational actions. You might be thinking now, okay, what's successful educational actions? I invite you to take a look at the European Toolkit for Schools. This is a platform promoted by the European Commission in which the best practices and successful educational actions are being explained. And it's not also they are being explained, but also a lot of insight of how we can do this are gathered there. A good news also is that we need to go from speculation to science, that the European Commission is saying that, research is saying that, and even Roma families are saying like, okay, we no longer want others to be experimenting with our children, because I'm not going to allow nobody to experiment with mine. So why I do have to allow others to experiment with Roma children? And we do know, unfortunately, that so many times there are children in 2022, Roma children that are going to the school and they are being segregated to grow tomatoes, for instance. So this is a reality, and this is a vulneration of a human and fundamental right. In 2006, it was funded, and we led this Included project. Included was a very, very important project, not solely because of the scientific data that it was able to gather, but also because of the social and political impact that it had. Included set the precedent for what we have been working in the subsequent years. Of course, Included was started in 2006, but we have been working on this line of research of successful educational actions for more than 35 years now. Included, as I've mentioned, had scientific impact. You can find more than 100 scientific articles published in peer-reviewed journals, but also it had political impact. So you can see legislation that has been built, taking into account the evidence provided by the Included. Actually, Included was in deep collaboration with the government of Catalonia, and if we have this very progressive legislation in Catalonia now, it's because of this ongoing dialogue and collaboration with policymakers, scientists, and also people on the ground. But also, Included has social impact. We are seeing now that more than 9,100 educational centers of different type, non-formal education, informal education, and formal education, going from early childhood education until adult education, are implementing the successful educational actions in Europe, in Latin America, most of them, but also going beyond. So what successful educational actions are those actions that can improve school success and contribute to social cohesion in every context where they are implemented. And we are gathering data, robust data, to show how one thing is working here in Barcelona, but at the same time is working in Malta, is working in Portugal, or is working in a tiny neighborhood in Mexico. Successful educational actions are in line with theories and research that highlight two very important principles in educational research. And I'm not gonna give a theoretical lesson here about education, but it's the key importance of interactions. We learn by talking with each other, and we know that the most diverse and the most the higher number of good quality interactions are going to help to improve our learning. And this is very, very important in early childhood education and for early childhood development. And also interactions are very important, but also it's very important community participation. We do know also, and I'm not gonna be a genius here saying that, but we know that we no longer learn alone. We learn also in other spaces, like at this one, or maybe in this community center. For that very reason, the slide that Fernando was showing of the sad reality of so many Roma children not having access to sports, not having access to cultural centers, all those are sites where learning also takes place. So successful educational actions combines those two key components, interactions and community participation. And you might be familiar with this concept of good practices, no? Good practices, and we are very used like to say, okay, good practices are those actions that obtain good results. Also, it's familiar in our literature or when we hear and we listen to others, best practices, those actions that obtain best results. But the current scientific literature and all educational research has clear that we need to go beyond good practices and we need to go beyond best practices. We need to find those successful actions that are going beyond one specific context. Because if we think that the context will limit and will determine our potential to transform things, we are not going to do anything. So we know we need to identify and to find the ways to identify that those things that are working across context. Just to give you a little bit of background, successful educational actions are built on the theories, on the theoretical ground of dialogic learning. So I'm sure that so many of you maybe studied pedagogy or social work or education, and you might be familiar with some of these authors. Dialogic learning, the theories of dialogic learning is Ramon Flecha. He was the founder of CREA, but Ramon Flecha was already collaborating with Freire and with many other researchers and social scientists like Chomsky and many others who are in line of the who they state the importance of dialogue. So learners, and this is what dialogic learning it's ground on, that learners reach deep understanding of subject knowledge as well as engage in processes of personal and collective transformation. And this is very important for what Manuela was mentioning early, of the importance of having work towards individual but also collective freedom, and the importance of egalitarian dialogue. So dialogue that are egalitarian, that recognizes and capitalizes on every person. So that means acknowledging the importance of cultural intelligence. So no matter your educational background, no matter where you come from, all of us are cultural well-being. So we come with a life work, we come with a history. Also, the importance of seeking transformation. The data that we are gathering here is very important, but at the same time, it has to set the ground to transform the situation. So this is very also based on Freirean pedagogy. It enhances instrumental dimension. This is very important because so many times we focus on feelings, on emotions, which are very good, but also we cannot forget instrumental dimension. We cannot forget that children need to go to the school and learn maths, learn sciences, or learn languages. Are based on solidarity, and this is very important because the non-Roma communities need to learn of the Roma communities how solidarity, real solidarity works. Acts as sources of meaning creation, how we can also create meaning when doing this, and promote the equality of difference. We don't need to be the same, but we need to preserve this diversity, but be equals in this diversity. I think that it's important to emphasize this instrumental dimension of size, as I've said. Successful educational actions achieve the best results in instrumental learning and values and emotions and feelings. So this needs to be a multiplication. It cannot be or. And this is very important. Emotional well-being is very important. We do know that. But also it's very important, as I've said, that we make sure that our children are also succeeding in all the other competencies that will enhance them to get a job when they reach their adult life. I don't know how much time do you have? Bien? Yeah, are you following me? If any question, I'm happy to stop. Again, you can find this information in the European Toolkit for School. Everything is open access, and I can say that most of the papers derived from included and other research, because they have been funded with public funding, are also in open access. There are 6 successful educational actions, but I'm going to explain here just 2 of them: dialogic literary gatherings and interactive groups. Also, keep in mind that family education is very important, because we do know sometimes we are saying that, well, the socioeconomical level of the parents are going to condition the academic results of children. We know that that's not true. That's a correlation. It's not a causal relationship. And we know that we can reverse that correlation if we train parents. So we are also developing programs of family education, and we have also gathered data of how those parents who are engaging in family education are being able to help their children, for instance, when they do their homework. But I want to focus us on 2 successful educational actions. Also, I invite you to check these social impact platforms. In here, you can access, it's very easy. You just like scan the code and you access there. There's one platform of education, and this is it's built on citizen participation, because yesterday we were talking about the importance of co-creating knowledge. So we are co-creating knowledge together, but also we are disseminating and putting the best evidence available to everyone. So I invite you to check this. What are dialogic literary? Well, it can be 5 minutes, that's perfect. So the gathering is an educational and cultural activity where people gathers together to create knowledge and meaning about the best universal and scientific knowledge. It can be literature, it can be music, it can be art, science, or math. So the importance of this is the attention, it's to the different interpretation, to the thoughts, to the feelings, and the argot that creates in participants. We have seen results of how when children, but also when adults participate in these dialogic gatherings, for instance, the dialogic literary gatherings, that means reading, for instance, together the Quixote or Lorca. So those artworks that have so many times been forbidden or kind of like not associated, that we, like people with less academic credentials, can access to this literary work. So how when we do the dialogic reading, the interpretations of this and the dialogues are very impactful. We have obtained data of how this improves oral expression, reasoning and argument creation, thinking critically, improving the vocabulary of the grammar, but also having an impact, for instance, in how trust is promoted, and that has an impact eventually on the coexistence. Interactive groups. Interactive group is a way we know of the importance, and as Said mentioned, the key importance of interactions, but we know that it's not, I'm gonna learn more if I talk with someone from a different context rather than if we just talk together, because we need to promote heterogeneous interaction. So the idea of interactive group is organizing classes, the schoolroom, in groups where children have different levels. So there are heterogeneous interactions, and children can help each other. That's key principles. So each small group has an adult volunteer also, so people from the community access the school and they help. It can be a Roma father, or it can be a Roma grandmother, or it can be a migrant mother, an illiterate even mother or father, who access the school and helps children to resolve the activities. Again, there's a lot of literature and evidence of how this works and how this impacts on the, not solely on the instrumental dimensions of children, how children learn more, but also on the coexistence, on the solidarity, on trust. I'm gonna go quick here, because I want to mention something that we were talking yesterday. And just as a takeaway, we need to keep in mind that dialogic interactions are important, that high quality interactions in all contexts are very important, that we need to bridge this gap between school and home. So for instance, if we do programs of family education, we are contributing to this, and also that we need to ensure success for all in learning and development. Also, the impacts are not solely in education. The impacts are already in health. For instance, there's this article that I invite you to check. We have get beautiful data of how, for instance, Roma families members, because of participating in the school, in how the school is organized, getting involved in the interactive groups, or getting involved in the dialogic literary gatherings, this has an impact in the health. For instance, there was a father here saying, for these Roma parents, the very act of participating in activities in which they see the children learning becomes a trigger that increases their emotional well-being. We have this mother, Rosario, that she said, you could see how children learn, how useful you felt. Teachers ask you your opinion. In the classroom, you're like if you were also another teacher. So that's very important. We need also to capture these examples. Also, families, this data, it's explained in the article, but this is data coming from one of the most poor neighborhoods in Spain, where the school was transformed and where successful educational actions were implemented. And we had parents like Luis engaging in the activities and saying how, for instance, they learned what an otorhinolaryngologist was, the ears, nose, mouth doctor. And it was beautiful, because I remember when I read this article and gathering these examples, because he was like, well, in the past, when I was not participating in the school, I went to the doctor and I could say, yes, 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 yes. Now I go there and I know that I need to ask, okay, but what's that? And I'm no longer ashamed to ask. Why? Because he has, the case of this man, he came from being at the prison because of the situation to engaging as a volunteer in these groups and seeing that his opinion mattered. Just a last example that I'm gonna give you, and that's all. Rosario, the same mother that was in the previous quotation, she said, by being involved in school, for instance, there are mothers whose children come to school very scruffy, and by coming here and joining in the interactive group, you change your image completely. You take better care of them. This happened to me. So we have also these examples of how transformation is taking place on the ground, and we can together build this road to reverse the situation that we are seeing that is taking place with children in Europe. I'm going to leave it here. Again, I invite you to take all this data in which is open access. I'm happy to keep sharing and keep talking and keep finding ways to collaborate together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emilia. Thank you, Fernando. I hope you can hear me. Thank you for your contributions. Of course, first of all, thanks to Liana and Manuela for their contribution and to open the door to such a rich content of information available. And as well, like we are so proud and enthusiastic about the outcome of the research, about the preliminary results from the research study. As Fernando mentioned, the infographics for all of 11 countries are already available. For those in the room, you can take them in there on the table. But those of you who are watching us online, or those of you who will watch the recording after this event that will be available on our YouTube channel, you are invited to visit our website, either on issa.nl or reyn.eu, and you can download and access all the infographics. You can also follow us on our social media channels, and you'll get all the updates about the research and other work that all 11 national REYNs and other ISSA members are doing in the region. Well, while Emilia was talking about the education and stressing the education, let us now a little bit bring back to the early childhood education and care, and also to mention, and I'm sure she was about to mention, but we had to cut it because we will have to disconnect from the online platform soon. So we encourage you also to visit the School Gateway, or you can also come to REYN Knowledge Hub, where the toolkit of inclusive early childhood education and care practices is available, where some positive and successful practices were identified. And here in the room are some representatives of ISSA and members of REYN who were implementing those successful practices and are still implementing them. So we encourage you to visit and check this toolkit as well, that especially highlights the early childhood education and care successful practices. But not just that, visit our Knowledge Hub on ISSA's website or Knowledge Hub on the REYN websites, where you will definitely find a lot of inspiring practices from our members, from our partners that are promoting, working, and implementing different programs and intervention when it comes to early childhood education, not just targeting young Roma children and their families, but also other vulnerable groups. What to say? At this stage, I would like to thank to all of you who were participating online. We will now close the online platform. And for those of you who will be watching this recording after the event, I hope you will find it useful. And if you have any additional information, feel free to reach out. Thank you. So now silence.